many of you, like when it comes to your family, there's some difficulties about sharing a living space all under the same roof and different personalities, different things going on? How many of you guys would say it's hard a lot of the time to live with family? How many of you would say, like, it's all rainbows and butterflies with family? Okay. Oh, of course. For Mike it is, because, yeah. The reality is we all know that sometimes living with people in general, no matter who they are, it's tough. When you get to college and you have a roommate with somebody, you'll learn this all over again. You'll think all your problems will go away because you'll start a new life on your own and you'll have new roommates and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, it's difficult living with people in general because when you live with different people, there's multiple personalities at play. There's different opinions, different preferences, and that leads to sometimes conflict, because anytime you're in a relationship with anybody other than a rock, you're going to have conflict because of those very same factors. There's differences that we have, and sometimes when they conflict, it can lead to some really weird tensions. And sometimes with family, it's even more difficult because, like, they're your blood. There's no getting away from them. Even if you move out someday, you're still going to be attached to them for the rest of your life. And so sometimes that presents a whole kind of issues. And there's family matters to be dealt with. And so this whole series is going to be about family matters. And so if you missed last week, we actually didn't start the series like we were supposed to. And so what I did was this week I did like a YouTube version of it. So I encourage you at some point, go back and watch that. That'll kind of set up the premise and some really kind of some important things to think about when it comes to this topic of family matters. But then today we're just going to keep on rolling through. This is something that's really important. And some of you, maybe you've, when we all grow up, we recognize, like, when we look at our moms and our dads and when we look at them, most of the time we have this like instinctive knowledge that they are the number one person in our lives. They're the ones that feed us. They're the ones that take care of us ever since we were infants. And then as we grow to be young kids, we look at our parents like as superheroes. Like, I remember as a kid thinking nothing could stop my dad. You know, my dad was the best. You know, and my mom too. I loved my mom. And, you know, the idea of hurting her feelings was like horrid to me. And then as I got older and I realized, like, you know, I can make my own decisions too, then suddenly it was weird. The dynamic changed, and all of a sudden the things that I thought were great about my parents sometimes turned into the things I hated because they were really smart, right? Which was great. But it was not so great when I was trying to, you know, trick them into doing what I wanted to do. And so, you know, they would catch me in lies if I tried to lie. I didn't lie a whole lot, but once in a while I did. And my parents always knew when I was lying. I don't know if it's something in my voice that changes or something. I don't know. But parents know you better than other people. They've seen you grow. They've known you since infanthood. And so there's something that happens in the dynamic with our parents that changes. And the same is true for every member of our family. Sometimes we come into this realization and we become disillusioned to the fact that everything's perfect. In fact, my mom, when she was growing up, she told me this story a lot when I was growing up. Her dad was a preaching pastor, and so that's my grandpa. And so she grew up as a preacher's kid. And, you know, anytime that there was a beer commercial that would come on the TV, he would boo, like, out loud. And so then she did it, and then it became a family thing. Every time a beer commercial came on, there's like this boo, right? And then she went to a friend's house. You guys know where this is going? A beer commercial came on. She's like, boo, boo. And then everyone looked at her like, what are you doing? And it's in moments like that you and I, when we, maybe it's not with beer commercials, but we have like a family thing that we didn't realize was a family thing until we do it outside of our family, and we realize, oh, not everybody does that. And you become disillusioned real fast to realize how maybe sometimes weird your family is, or different. And it's usually right about this age, or middle school, or early high school, where that disillusionment happens, and you realize, oh. And And then you have reason to be embarrassed. And sometimes parents take advantage of that, and they go out of their way to embarrass you in front of people. How many of you have parents like that will go out of their way to embarrass you in front of people, right? And I had parents like that. And so the reality is a lot of times that when we become disillusioned, it causes us to wrestle with different kinds of tensions. And the reality is, and we all know this because we're all human, we're all imperfect, right? That means that every family is imperfect. And at some point or another, because in one way or another, every family is fractured. Every family. Every family has things. Maybe when you became disillusioned, when you realized that there was something different about your family, maybe it was because you found out something that just wasn't, that you didn't realize. That maybe it was a mistake that happened a long time ago. Maybe there was relationship trouble. Maybe there were legal issues. Stories about your family that you didn't know until you did, and when you did, it caused you to look at your family different and maybe even lose trust. I remember when I was little, and I had a conversation with my mom, and I had to ask her, why do I have 3 sets of grandparents? Well, and then she had to tell me the story of how her parents got divorced when she was 12. And she wanted to reassure me nothing like that would happen to my parents, to my mom and dad. But I remember having like this sudden realization, oh, people can do that. People can split up, even though they've committed their lives to each other. And so some of us, when we have that disillusion, when we come to realize that every family is fractured, and our own family is no exception, it causes, some different tensions to take place. And what we recognize is in our families there are different things. There are different things that we recognize. There's my family, there's me, and then we come kind of awakened to the fact that there are fractures, secrets, tensions, maybe that we weren't aware of before, but now we are, because we realize that all people are imperfect. And so maybe there's just a constant tension when you're at home. And maybe it's with a person, or maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's an aunt and uncle. I don't know, but maybe there's somebody in your family that when they're around, there's this tension and you can't quite feel what it is. Or maybe it's nothing big happened, but just you're finding that you don't really get along with people in your family or your parents anymore. And so there's this tension, like everyone's walking around each other on eggshells because they don't want to hurt each other's feelings or say something that's going to spark someone's anger or anything like that. And so maybe there's this constant tension. Maybe there are those fractures of divorce or something else that has happened in your family history that maybe causes you to lose trust a little bit. Or maybe even there's other secrets that have been unsecreted and you found out. And now you don't really know what to deal how to deal with those different feelings. But the reality is every family is fractured, and there is no pain like family pain. And this is true because family is supposed to be your safe place, right? Family is supposed to be the place where you're safe, where you don't have to be anybody but yourself, where you can trust the people wholeheartedly. They're your blood, they're your family. But the reality is there's no pain like family pain. You can have a spat with a friend and it hurts and it's painful. But when there's something going on in your family and you feel like trust has been swept out from under you, there's no pain quite like that. And there's things that we typically do when this happens. We either count our family out or we count ourselves out. Maybe after you find out about something, you cut your family, you count your family out. And so, it's kind of you and just dealing with the fractures and the tensions and the secrets that are going on in your family, and you decide, I don't want any part of that. I'm going to count them out. They're not trustworthy. I can't depend on them. I got to take care of me. I'm going to go isolate myself in my room and just kind of ignore everything else that's going on because my family doesn't exist. I can't wait till I graduate and get out of here and start my own life. And maybe we try to take our family out of that equation. So sometimes we count our family out because of those things. Maybe your parents did get divorced, and they lost that authority in your life to be able to tell you anything because they couldn't even figure their own lives out. And so you have that going on. Or maybe you decided that a step-parent coming in didn't have the authority like your other parents, and so you didn't trust them, and then you're not going to listen to that, and you've counted them out. Or maybe you decided to shut one of your siblings out just because you don't want to deal with them anymore. Maybe it's an annoyance and you don't want to have anything to do with. Trust me, I've been there where it's like, I can't win. And so I'm just going to, we can't get along, that's fine. We'll just kind of pretend they're not there and we count our family out. Or maybe we count ourselves out. And that's where we do. We go isolate ourselves to our own room. We keep ourselves busy with other things. We go to other friends' house in an effort to avoid everything in our family. And in order to avoid all the fractures and tension and secrets that are associated with your family. And so you count yourself out. And it's tough. When you do that, maybe it is you isolate yourself, you stay in your room, and you think maybe if I'm not going to if I don't want to deal with those, I just won't deal with those, and I'll take myself out of the equation. They can deal with their stuff. I'm going to be over here, and they can do their thing, but I'm not going to have any part in that anymore. And when these things come to the surface, and when we recognize, and when we become disillusioned with the reality, with not the reality, but the fantasy that our family is perfect, we become disillusioned with that. We react in those ways oftentimes. We either count our family out or we count ourselves out. Because there's no way to count these things out sometimes. Sometimes there's no way of fixing things. And that doesn't mean that things can't be forgiven, but that means these things have always changed the course of the future. And so you can't always avoid it. And so the tension can be, how do I deal with my family? How do I deal with my life with this reality? And how do I actually allow my faith to thrive in this environment? Or maybe even in spite of this environment, if it's not a good situation. And the good news is, where we're going to look today, is all throughout the Bible, we see that God uses messed up people over and over and over again. And just because it messed up people or messed up families, there's a lot of messed up families in Scripture. You don't even have to read very far in the Old Testament. The very first family, one of the sons kills his brother, right? It starts pretty rocky, right? Sin does that. And so there's lots of brokenness and fractures and just there's lots of secrets, lots of stuff with family and tension going on in the Bible. But the good news is that God tends to use those situations despite our belief that we can count them out or count ourselves out. And so where we're actually going to look at a passage in Genesis where we're going to be looking at the family of Abraham, which eventually becomes the nation of Israel. So Abraham, God promises, hey, I'm going to make a great nation out of you, and eventually from your family line, there's going to be the Savior of the world who's going to redeem all this garbage that has happened. And he's like, great. So God gives him a son, Isaac, and then Isaac has his two sons named Jacob and Esau. And that's where our story is going to pick up today. And what you need to know is Esau and Jacob were twins, but Esau was born first. He came out before Jacob, and so he was the oldest. He was also the hunter and the warrior. He was a man of action. And so when you look at Esau, think outdoorsy. Think the guy who goes and brings in the food, who does the hunting and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, I'm gonna cough. COVID. I promise I don't have COVID. It's just scratchy throat. I mean, I guess I could be asymptomatic. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have anything. I can't even joke like that anymore. I shouldn't say anymore because I've always joked like that. I can't joke like that with a microphone. Maybe I'll edit this out of the video later. We'll see. Probably not. I probably won't. So Esau is the older, and he's that stuff. Jacob is the younger brother. He comes out after Esau, and so you're the youngest. You don't get some of the benefits that we're going to talk about here in a second. But he loved to cook with his mom, but he was also the thinker and the schemer. You know how there's some people that keep their head to the ground and they do their work and they get stuff done. They make straight A's and they pull it together. And then there's the people that are like, how can I work smarter and not harder? And they work twice as hard. Maybe sometimes is the people who just keep their head to the ground and get their work done. They work twice as hard at figuring out how they can get out of the work. How many of you are that person? That's me too. So I can relate with you people. This was Jacob also, by the way. He was the thinker and the schemer. He was also the artist. He was into poetry and different things like that. So he and his brother had lots of differences. How many of you guys, you look at your siblings and you're like, we have nothing in common, right? These people could relate. Jacob and Esau wrestled with this. And so as the older brother, though, Esau was to inherit the birthright. Okay? So this is really important. he had the birthright. And according to the customs of that time, he would receive a lot of privileges that the other children wouldn't get. One of them being he would receive double the amount of money when his parents died, or when his dad died, I should say. He would receive power that came with that in the family, and he would become the leader of the entire family tribe when his dad passed away. And this, maybe the biggest deal of all, other than those things, is he would get that birthright, but he would also get the blessing from the father. And this blessing was a big deal. It meant that he would be not only blessed in the family, but blessed specifically by God as the firstborn. How many of you are the oldest in your family? When you go home, just nonchalantly walk in the door and be like, hey, I'm blessed by God more than all y'all. And just see how that goes. Just walk up to your younger siblings and say, hey, I'm blessed and you're not, because I'm the firstborn. No, don't do that actually, because then you'll get into trouble. But this is the kind of attitude that Esau had, and sometimes the oldest would get. They would have that birthright, and they would have the blessing. So one day, Jacob, I told you he's the thinker and the schemer. So Esau, he's out, working someday. He comes in from a hunting trip, and he is hungry. How many of you guys, you've ever been so hungry and you're like hangry and you can't think straight because all you can think about is I need food in my body right now, right? It's a real thing. It's like, don't talk to me when I'm hangry because I won't be the best version of myself. So, and I will have to apologize later. So this is Esau right now. And he comes in, and this is the first real major step of trouble in their story. So the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, that's their father, he loved Esau. But Rebekah, the mom, she loved Jacob. So once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. And he said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I am famished. Everybody say, I'm famished. Whenever I hear that word, I just think of like a British accent lady saying, I'm famished. Is that just me? Anybody else think of that? Just me? Cool. Okay. So he comes in, I'm famished. Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Like, that kind of came out of nowhere. You can tell Jacob was just waiting for the opportunity. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear it to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling him his birthright, selling it to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. And so Esau despised his birthright. He was upset by that situation because he's like, fine, whatever. He let his hungry stomach do the thinking for him, and he gave away his birthright. So this is already bad news. And this is classic older, younger sibling rivalry, right? And we may not, do it in those terms, but similarly, we have the same kind of arguments with our family today and with our siblings. But the reality is that God knew their mess. He saw how fractured they were, and he didn't run away from them. God chooses to use them anyway. So to kind of like recap, or not recap, but to finish the story out for you, basically what happens is not only does Jacob con Esau basically out of his birthright, but also on his father's deathbed, he comes up and pretends to be his brother and cons his own dad with the help of his mother to give him the blessing that was due to the firstborn. And so he gets the blessing as well as the birthright. And then Esau walks in right as this happens, and he's like, no, wait, that's mine. That's my blessing. I'm the firstborn. Not only has he conned me out of my birthright, but he's also going to take my blessing as well. And this causes this huge rift in the family. Like all the tension built up over the years, this was the final straw. So Esau decides he's going to kill his brother. Jacob decides, I don't want any of that. So he bounces and he's gone. And they don't talk to each other for years. But eventually they come back together. They mend the fence, so to speak. And the family gets back together. And actually God fulfills the promise that he gave to their grandfather Abraham to bless that nation and to provide, and this is what becomes the nation of Israel. All throughout the Old Testament, this is God's people. And then Jesus comes from that and redeems the world. And the point is God is able to use this family. In fact, even the author of Hebrews writes at the very end of Hebrews chapter 11, he's recounting the stories and the families of faith all throughout God's history with his people. And this is what he says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 20. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. And what you find is that even though their family was fractured, sometimes someone would look at that and say beyond repair. Even when they were literally trying to kill each other because of their own disputes and their differences, God still redeemed their family and used them to bless the entire universe. And Jesus comes through that, and they're noted as being a family of faith in the lineage of Jesus, which was a huge deal, especially to the audience reading this from Hebrews, because it shows that even though your family is fractured, God can still use them. And that's the message I know we all need to hear from time to time, is that even when your family is fractured, God can use them. And your family matters even when it is fractured. Your family matters even when it's fractured. So, whatever you do, don't count them out. Don't count your family out. And don't count yourself out. Because God is still at work, and even when it seems like he's not going to be showing up there, when it seems like there's nothing good to come out of that, when all you want to do is leave, or whenever it seems like, you can just better take care of you if you isolate and count yourself out and kind of leave your family to their thing while you do your thing, don't do that. Remember that God is still using your family. When it feels like chaos in your family, and it feels like too much, don't isolate. When the arguing feels constant, don't run away. And if you need to take a step away because of safety or abuse issues, that's different. Obviously, do that and seek help for that. But we got people here who would love to talk with you. You've got small group leaders that care deeply about each and every one of you. And there are safe places for you to go. But I'm talking about when it comes to annoyances, when it comes to things when you don't get along, when it comes to arguments, when it comes to things that seem beyond your control, but they're not any in the danger realm, what I'll call. They're more in the constant conflict, the fractures, the tensions, and the secrets. When it's in that realm, don't count your family out and don't count yourself out. Do everything in your power to still, if you watch the video for last week, make everything about love. And it sounds simple, it sounds too easy, it sounds cliche, but really, when you focus on that one thing, it will change your perspective, and it will change your outlook, and it will change the way that God is able to use you and your faith in the midst of your family. So let me pray. And I'll dismiss you guys to your small groups, and then we'll be done for the night.